Good evening and welcome back to Prairie Farmstead. My name is Jessie and my husband and I are gardening in Zone 6B in southeast Kansas on a south-facing slope. So we have about 4,000 square feet that we're gardening right now, and we're continuously growing that. So I would love to take you along on our journey as we continue to do that, and yeah, just show you what you do. And before we get into this video, I would just like to send a shout out to Dale and Lisa over at 9 Acre Family Farm. They have been so supportive, and they're honestly the reason that I started doing these YouTube videos. So go over, give them a follow, tell them that I sent you over there. And yeah, thank you Dale and Lisa so much. And also thank you to everybody who has liked, commented, subscribed, all the encouragement and support from my last video. I was just overwhelmed with all the feedback that you guys gave me. So thank you so much. I really appreciate that. So let's get into this video. I believe this little pond back here is where we left off last time. There's Teddy, our milk cow, starring in today's video. So I'll turn you guys around here and we will get back into these tomatoes. Now we got 2 rows of tomatoes here, and these are all of my sauce varieties. I think I've got 3 different sauce varieties, and then these right here at the front, the first 5 or 6 plants, these are all cherry tomatoes. So I think where I left off in the last video was talking about this Johnson grass that you see in the back. It's really tall, very prolific. It spreads from the rhizome and the seed. And so what that means is it has a root, and it just keeps coming back up from the root. It doesn't have to put out seed to continue living. And the best way that we have found to get rid of that is to put down cardboard, but not under your compost so that it doesn't break down as quickly. Just put mulch on top of your cardboard to help hold in some moisture for your plants. And don't till it. Tilling the Johnson grass seems to make it stronger. Anytime you chop it up, every little bit that you chop up will send up a new blade of grass. It's kind of like comfrey root. Anytime you chop that up, you got a new plant. So it's best to just pull it and keep pulling it until the rhizome runs out of energy and can't send up any more stalks. So in these tomatoes, we've also got some blackberries. And these are an interesting variety. I'm forgetting the name, but I feel like there's Arkansas something in the name of it. And my husband traded these a while back. We did some bartering with a fellow. And they're doing pretty good. There's 3 or 4 that survived in here. And we'll come on around here. And I just harvested this basil today, like a few hours ago. So it's looking a little small, but that's because it's been harvested. So in this bed, it's not near as bad, Johnson grass. Also, what you see right down there at the base of that plant is eggshells. Whenever in the wintertime, we save up all of our eggshells usually we bury them when we plant the tomatoes. And that provides calcium to the plant. It helps prevent black blossom end rot is what it does. It helps prevent that. And we really do see a difference whenever we use eggshells. But I forgot to plant it in when we planted the tomatoes. So I just put it on top. It'll be a slow release kind of thing. And it'll still get the job done. Here we've got some Georgia collard greens. And you can tell that the cabbage moths are getting these, which I don't do a whole lot with collard greens. I primarily grow them for goat food. So I kind of use them as a bait so that the cabbage moths will leave alone my prized broccoli and cauliflower and cabbages. And then we got some dill there. It's a good companion for both tomatoes and collard greens. This is our cruciferous varieties. Here on this end, we have cabbages. And now, for us, this is about the only way we can grow cabbages or any type of cruciferous vegetable without getting a tremendous amount of bug damage, so much so that we don't even get a harvest. This is called tulle, Tulle, and we just used some hoops that we got from, oh, I believe we got these from the gardener's workshop. And we just, it's really simple. You wouldn't even have to use the hoops, really. It can just lay on top of the plants. But primarily, and you can see there's a big gap there. I need to come in with some more clothespins and close that up. But we just harvested quite a bit of broccoli out of that this evening. I just missed getting that closed up. And my husband actually undersowed, I guess you would call it, sweet potatoes in here. I'll see if I can find some to show you. But these broccoli will be pulled out here not too long. The broccoli and cauliflower will be finishing here in the next month. And then, so we planted sweet potatoes down underneath. The broccoli will shade it. There's a little bitty one right there. They're just sweet potato slips. They're in there about every 18 inches throughout the middle of this. And then there's another row going on the outside right along the netting. But that will give the sweet potato slips while they're young some protection from just too much light and the heat as well. It'll provide it some shade. The broccoli and the rest of those vegetables in there will hold in moisture. The roots will hold in moisture, and so will the shade. It'll help with keeping things moist. So the sweet potatoes will just do a lot better. And then by the time it's ready to take the broccoli out, the sweet potatoes will be plenty big to survive on their own, and we won't have as much downtime in this bed. So we like to do things like that to try to keep production up, getting a lot out of a small area and multiple harvests out of our beds. But this is our zucchini bed, and it is looking pretty sad right now. We got really busy this last week, and we were not able to stay on top of the squash bugs and eggs. So you can see 2 plants right there that need taken out. Possibly some more down there, and one up here. They're just too far gone. They need to be taken out, and we need to get in here and get to squashing these. Now what we'll do, like this one has heavy, it looks good, but it has heavy infestation of squash bugs. And if you don't know what squash bug eggs look like, that right there is exactly what they look like. I don't even care if I rip the leaves. Just squish every egg you can. And I don't know if there's any squash bugs in here or not. I'm sure there is. It's just whether we will see them. They're usually under the leaves. But, so when we have a heavy infestation of lots of squash and lots of squash bugs, or squash bug eggs and squash bugs, we will just pull the whole plant and take it to the chickens. Let them get all those eggs, and when they hatch out, they'll eat the bugs and whatnot. That is the best way to end a cycle that we have found. So, and I am constantly succession sowing zucchini and squash, so I'm not really worried about staying on top of one plant's infestation. I just don't have the time. I have in the past and had only planted once, but I have found with a busy life, when you have a lot of, well, not a lot, but when you have children and when you have a lot going on, it's just sometimes easier to just keep restarting plants, and then they're more productive and prolific when they're younger anyways. Alright, and this is our potato bed. There's actually 2 of them here, but you can't tell because there's so much Johnson grass on the outside of that bed that you can't even see. But this right here is 2 beds of potatoes. And I think I told you guys in the last video that we were going to have some comparisons of eyed up or not eyed up store-bought potatoes planted directly in versus eyed up saved seed potatoes. And these are the saved seed potatoes that a friend of ours brought to us that she grew last year. And so we're super thankful for that. We actually dug some up and sent some home with her today. She was here. Her and her husband were here bartering for some milk by weeding the garden and such. So that was, I was really happy with it. I just pulled, there's 3 plants that were right here. They're actually right here on the ground. I haven't even cleaned them up, but I was pretty impressed with, it was actually more like 2.5 plants. One of them was just a small, I don't know if it just got pushed out or didn't have enough light or just was small in general, but it just didn't do that well. So it's like 2.5 plants worth of potatoes, and I was really pleased with how the potatoes looked and their size and the amount of potatoes that the plant put on. And the same thing up here, and this is a raised bed. You can kind of see the potatoes. There's a good amount of Johnson grass in there. Once the Johnson grass comes up and gets to a certain size in a potato bed or any bed with a root crop, we just leave it alone until it's time to harvest that root crop, because by pulling the rhizome, the Johnson grass rhizome, I don't want to disturb the roots of whatever root crop we have in. So it's best to just leave it, and we'll get after it when we get this out of here. Now this here looks like a big, I don't even know what it looks like. I guess just a big patch of pasture almost. But there's a lot of sunflowers in here. What this was, and still is honestly, is our einkorn. It's a little bit sparse, but it's almost ready for harvest. Look at that. Yeah, so I got this einkorn seed from Azure Standard. And that's what all the dead looking yellow stuff is in this bed. And you can't really tell how much is actually in here because there's a good amount of weeds, which Sage has harvested or pulled the weeds out of here several times. So it's not terrible, but it's still a decent amount. There's certain things he left on purpose, like the sunflowers for beneficial pollinators and such. But there's still some little ragweeds and plenty of Johnson grass. So this was where we grew our corn last year. And then late last fall, a little bit too late, we planted the einkorn, and that's why it's so sparse. It was just the goats got in and ate it off a few times, and it had a late start to begin with. So once the einkorn is done, we will probably let it self-sow and then compost on top of that, and maybe put some more cardboard down. I'm not quite sure, since the einkorn, or one self-sow the einkorn. Oftentimes the cardboard will break down, and the seeds below it, if we don't put too much compost on, will still sprout of the stuff we want. Obviously, we don't want weed seeds sprouting. But we'll just have to see on that one. And we have more Johnson grass. It's our number one weed, Johnson grass and bindweed. But this is half a strawberry bed. It's just kind of the bed we put extra strawberries in off of our main strawberry bed. And then we also have several bush beans in here. And I don't think they're flowering yet. They haven't been in here terribly long, just a few weeks maybe. But I got a lot more sown, and we're going to fill this bed up, and we're going to come weed it. That's a big borage plant. I told you in the last video that we do a lot of companion planting, and everybody says borage is a great companion for strawberries. And that is true, because it brings in tons of pollinators. But don't plant it in the middle of your strawberries, because it gets huge like this and then it falls over and smothers your strawberries. So learn that from experience. Don't put too much borage in with your strawberries, or at least not too close to the strawberries. Going on down, this is another full bed of strawberries. You can't really tell for all the Johnson grass, but if I get you in here close, you can see it's there. They're doing good under there. They're not too picky. We need to get back in here. We've pulled the Johnson in this several times. Our plan is to when we get some time, dig up all these strawberry plants, because this bed was one of the very original ones that we started before we started doing the Charles Dowding Ruth Stout hybrid. And the Ruth Stout method, for us at least, does not work with Johnson grass. It almost makes it come up more. Like, I don't know if it's just the moisture that the mulch holds in that makes the Johnson grass so prolific or what. But so we're gonna dig up all of these strawberries, pull all of the Johnson, and put down 2, 3 at least layers of compost, and we're gonna see where that gets us. Or did I say compost? 2 to 3 layers of cardboard, and then a good 6 inches of compost. And this might not be our strawberry bed anymore. We might move the strawberries somewhere else. We got plenty of space to play with and move them around. We might grow something else here next year that's easier to keep up with. Strawberries and Johnson grass are hard because, I don't know, I think maybe we just kind of forget about our strawberries because you only deal with them harvesting wise for a short amount in the year, and then the rest of the year they kind of just get forgotten about. So we're gonna try digging them up, pulling the Johnson rhizomes out, Johnson grass and rhizome out, putting down tons of cardboard, putting down more compost, and then a heavy mulch on top of that, and then planting something in that's going to keep the ground busy so that the earth isn't trying to send up anything to cover her bare soil, because everybody knows Mother Nature does not like to be bare. Okay, and then directly parallel with our strawberry beds, which are right here, and then there's our einkorn bed, we have this little wild strip of comfrey. I told you guys I love the cottage style, and I love pollinator gardens. So we have tons of comfrey. And now, if you go to buy comfrey, there is a type of comfrey that does not spread by seed. Get that comfrey. Because if you want to let it flower like I do continuously, it will eventually go to seed. Now, we do need to chop this back because it has all gone to seed. We want to chop it back before it starts blowing around, because it has blown around and it has seeded in several of my garden spots, and it is terribly hard to get rid of once it's seeded somewhere. It's harder than Johnson grass to get out once it's somewhere you don't want it to be. You cut up just a little sliver of root and you got a new plant. So be careful. There is a variety that does not sow by seed. It only sows by rhizome, or spreads by rhizome. So get that one. Learn from my mistakes. And then we also have some daylilies, and this tree. I don't know what kind of tree this is. I think we're going to leave it. I kind of like where it's at. It's a little closer than I would like, but I don't know. If you know what type of tree this is, it's got my husband is so good at identifying trees. He works with trees for his job, so he knows trees, and he's just always been a nature freak. So, but he doesn't know what kind of tree this is. If you know what kind of tree this is, comment. I would love to know. And then we'll continue our wildlife zone into what used to be a pretty good sunflower patch and is now being taken over by comfrey as well. Which is a good thing. The pollinator, it's wonderful for honeybees, bumblebees, all the pollinators. They all love it. A future garden bed. This was a garden bed at one point, but not for very long. We just started establishing it and then never, I think we planted some beans in it, and just it got forgotten about. We got way too busy. But this is a pretty big slope. This started out as another micro pond. So right in the middle there, you can kind of tell that there's a hole right there. We're filling that in with weeds. I want to get rid of that. I don't like the location. And we used to have 2 tractor tracks here, and then we learned about how they release toxins as they break down over time into the food, and we noticed some off flavoring in the food that we were growing, and so we ripped everything out of those, brought the tractor down, took them out, and we had made them hugel beds. And if you don't know what that is, search the term hugelculture, and you'll find all kinds of cool stuff. Sage is really into it. He loves it. But essentially, it's where you bury wood. You can use sticks, you can use firewood, you can use big logs, whatever your preference is. The bigger it is, the longer it will take to break down. But essentially, the whole point of it is that that wood will suck up and hold in moisture, and then be a slow release to your plants over time, making it to where it's a drought-resistant bed, and where and where you don't have to water. So that's really cool. I do love that. But here's what I have to say about hugel, and everybody tells you this up front that I know of that does hugel culture. It's it's like wine. It takes a while to get to the good point. When anytime you bury wood, or even when you put wood chips on top of the ground, wood, as it breaks down, absorbs nitrogen from the ground, the area around it, to break down, and then it will release that eventually. But so the first year of gardening is not going to be very good. It's best if you can make the bed and then either grow cover crops on it or just forget about it for a while. Mulch it heavily, put a tarp over it, whatever, to keep the weeds from coming in. But yeah, it's best it will get better with time. We have one bed that um, it was didn't do anything very good the first year, and we almost gave up on it. And then the next year we tried again, and it was a little better. And now this year is probably the 3rd year that we had wood chips on it, and we've already like covered it up with compost, let it break down, all that stuff. It is amazing. It is my best bed for growing peppers. It's my herb bed. A stinging nettle plant totally took over everything. I think we might have fixed that issue. But it's when you dig down in there, it's just humusy, light brown, aerated, soft. It would be amazing at growing carrots, I'm sure. It holds in the perfect amount of moisture. It drains wonderfully. It's amazing. Hugelculture is amazing once it's had time to break down and release the nitrogen back out. And where you don't have to water. So that's really cool. I do love that. But here's what I have to say about hugel, and everybody tells you this up front that I know of that does hugel culture. It's it's like wine. It takes a while to get to the good point. When anytime you bury wood, or even when you put wood chips on top of the ground, wood, as it breaks down, absorbs nitrogen from the ground, the area around it, to break down, and then it will release that eventually. But so the first year of gardening is not going to be very good. It's best if you can make the bed and then either grow cover crops on it or just forget about it for a while. Mulch it heavily, put a tarp over it, whatever, to keep the weeds from coming in. But yeah, it's best it will get better with time. We have one bed that it was didn't do anything very good the first year, and we almost gave up on it. And then the next year we tried again, and it was a little better. And now this year is probably the 3rd year that we had wood chips on it, and we've already like covered it up with compost, let it break down, all that stuff. It is amazing. It is my best bed for growing peppers. It's my herb bed. A stinging nettle plant totally took over everything. I think we might have fixed that issue. But it's when you dig down in there, it's just humusy, light brown, aerated, soft. It would be amazing at growing carrots, I'm sure. It holds in the perfect amount of moisture. It drains wonderfully. It's amazing. Hugelculture is amazing once it's had time to break down and release the nitrogen back out. We are at the very far east end of our garden, And this is just a bare patch. I have grown one time, I grew zinnias right here where all of this ragweed is. So there was compost at one time. You can tell there's cardboard laying there. We were gonna get this cleaned up and back into shape this spring, but just too much stuff piled on our plates and we didn't get to it, which is totally fine. It will be there for now. Sage is just mowing most of it. We've got a nice row of sunflowers right here that we just left for pollinators. There's some more throughout there. But also this wire that you see, this very pitiful wire, no, it just needs tied up with some more posts, is our blackberry trellis. And a friend, a neighbor, gave us some blackberries that she thinned out of her own garden. And these are a really nice domesticated blackberry variety of big berries, thornless bushes. Here's one that's flowering. So we are super excited for these guys to grow up and provide us with some delicious, delicious berries. And this goes all the way down our garden at the very back of it, along our cattle fence, or our pasture fence. And yeah. So it goes all the way down the pasture fence here. And then there's more Johnson that needs to be taken care of. Sage had a tree in here. I don't know if it's live. We've tried a couple of years planting different varieties of trees, and we just don't have time to take care of it. So we have kind of given up on the trees. Make that 2 more areas. I almost completely forgot about our herb bed, which is where I was just telling you was originally a hugelkultur thing. We covered the wood chips. We used wood chips and then covered them with a bunch of compost. And this is the most fantastic bed I have ever seen. When I was planting these jalapeno peppers, which are right here, look how good they look. When I was planting them, they just looked phenomenal. It was amazing, the dirt was. But all of that over there is oregano. I need to cut it back and harvest it. We've got a big sage plant in here. All the white flower is cilantro that has bolted and we're letting go to seed. All this curly stuff over here is parsley, which also needs harvested. And then of course my gorgeous jalapeno plants. We don't eat a whole lot of spicy food, but I like to have it to make a little bit spicier salsa. And I like it on pizza. I don't like spicy stuff, but I like it on, I like a little kick on my pizza.